Welcome to Sunny Brands, the podcast that highlights the companies that make the world a better place. I'm Eleazar, founder of Notion, a branding agency and proud B Corp here in Portland, Oregon. And here are my co-hosts.
Hi, this is Rebecca, CEO and co-founder of the Impact Collective, also a certified B Corp in Portland, Oregon.
And I'm Sarah. I am the other co-founder of the Impact Collective. I'm very eager for today's episode, actually. I think that, again, throughout this season, we've been exploring different methods and modes and directions to impact. And today we're taking a little bit of a departure into something that's actually, I want to say wildly different from what we've been talking about in terms of how this organization has chosen to kind of follow their values and to make their impact. So today we're talking about New Avenues, Inc.
Okay.
So New Avenues, Inc., they're a social enterprise based here in Portland, Oregon.
What does that mean?
A social enterprise is an organization that was created to solve a social or environmental problem.
Is it still a business?
It is still a business,
Okay.
yes. Yeah.
It doesn't have to be. It could be a nonprofit, but this one we're talking about is a for-profit.
Okay.
business,
Yeah. But there's a spectrum to impact. And so this is one route that people can consider taking. So New Avenues, Inc., they specialize in producing screen-printed and promotional items like T-shirts, tote bags, anything that you want to throw your logo, your brand on. You want to use it at a conference, at a swag booth. So that on its head might not seem like a social enterprise.
Not at all.
So their social enterprise-ness comes from how they do their promotional items. So they were founded in 2013, and they produce high quality and cost competitive swag for customers. But their employment model is they provide paid internships to youth facing homelessness and housing instability. So they provide these paid internships as well as a lot of other career coaching opportunities, and it's a really impactful model. It's a way that an organization has kind of started with their why and then figured out the way to get there.
That's good.
Their why is really providing these opportunities.
That's dope.
Customers in need get their high quality branded goods, and then these youth facing housing instability get job training. So,
Wow.
New Avenues, Inc. is an organization that I'm excited to talk about because it's kind of the gold standard for social enterprise, which Sarah just mentioned, and all the way, including not only what they do, but how they're structured is all about how they want to make an impact and how their purpose is really embedded into their business. So New Avenues, Inc. is a for-profit. They are owned by a nonprofit called New Avenues for Youth, which is a nonprofit based in Portland dedicated to the prevention and intervention of youth homelessness. They were founded in 1997, and their programs have impacted more than 30,000 young people.
Wow.
So they were obviously founded first, and they saw this need to help those that they serve in a very specific way that could also bring in revenue. And they decided to create this for-profit that all the profits from the for-profit New Avenues, Inc. go to the nonprofit. So
Super interesting.
it is very interesting, a unique model, and I think it's such a cool way to see when you think about the spectrum from nonprofit to for-profit, this is like a perfect marriage of those two.
And nonprofit can have a business, and businesses can have nonprofits?
Yes and no. So it's much easier for a nonprofit to have a for-profit, to own a for-profit. The other way around is not so simple. A for-profit can't technically own a nonprofit because nonprofits don't have owners. You can have a nonprofit arm, but it gets really tricky.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
I see.
IRS rules get really tricky around, as you can see, that could easily be used as a scam.
If a business started a nonprofit, then it's not owned by the business, and it will have its own board and executive director, and there will need to be some sort of fiscal separation between business and nonprofit, but also governance.
Yep.
Okay.
Exactly. So it's a little more tricky that way. But I think the cool thing about this is hasn't been around forever. Like there's new models that are ripe for innovation, I should say, because what we talk about is like businesses doing for good. That also hasn't been around that long, you know, like nonprofits and for-profits used to be completely different. And it hasn't, I don't know, in the last 50 years, probably the spectrum has gotten a lot more, it's bigger, you know, there's a lot more ways to bridge that gap.
What hunch do you have on why they chose to do a business rather than just another nonprofit underneath a nonprofit?
Yeah, great question. For nonprofits, it can be a little tricky to earn revenue as a nonprofit. It's just a lot simpler. Us as business owners, we can make revenue however we want. And like the IRS doesn't care. But so it's a lot easier for a nonprofit to have a for-profit arm that can just operate like a normal business. And then the profits get directed back to the nonprofit. Yeah.
And on the for-profit side too, that's a big part of the job training, right? And so rather than just having, for the youth who are working at New Avenues Inc., rather than just giving them roles within the nonprofit or doing sort of like simulated job training, it's an actual business, right? And so they're able to kind of train and guide them in a really tangible, like real world way that provides them with skills that they can go on for employment.
Actually, like not the business becomes not just a way to make money, but an actual training ground.
Yep.
Yeah.
Which is a part of their mission of what they're trying to accomplish.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
A lot of social enterprises you see have this focus of workforce development for exactly that reason. Like that's the problem they're solving really is around workforce development. So it makes sense to have a business that focuses on that. So, and actually New Avenues for Youth has another social enterprise, which is a Ben & Jerry's franchise. Yeah.
Okay. Now you're really throwing me for a spin on the brand architecture of this thing.
Yeah. So how do you feel?
Yeah. That's for you to figure out.
I can tell you, but yeah.
I believe it's the only Ben & Jerry's that is owned by a nonprofit in the country. But yeah, so.
And I'm assuming that's also a move on the training ground for the youth to learn a place. Wow, that's fascinating.
Yeah, it's really cool. Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Go for it. Yeah.
Okay, so at Notion we have Dream Night, which is our initiative. It's a pro bono initiative. We have 5% of our top revenue that we put towards, and we donate to minority-owned businesses or minority-led organizations or organizations that their outcomes are at least the impact of helping with the equity gap. And so we donate 5%. That has changed every year because the 5% is always different for us, and we've been growing. And so the reason why we do it the way we do it today is because we are in this mission which aligns with our vision, which is to prove that businesses don't have to sacrifice, neither are the three Ps, people, profit, and planet. And I have been like, I don't want to do a nonprofit. Though we work with a lot of nonprofits and I understand kind of how boards work and all that sort of thing, I want to make this statement as a brand that you don't have to create a nonprofit. Nonprofits are not the only ones that are required to do good. And so I want to prove that businesses can do that. But this conversation, what are some of the benefits if I were to consider making Dream Night its own nonprofit? What would be some of the pros and cons to that?
Well, I'll preface this by saying I'm not a lawyer. And I think there's a lot of legal reasons why some of these things matter, and I am not a lawyer, so that could be a big portion of this. But I do think it's in terms of Dream Night. Where are you is all your funding always going to come from your business, or are you trying to have more funding?
All the funding, most of the funding for sure has come from my business. But I think one of the things that could be attractive is that you donate towards a nonprofit and then we use that. And then other people are funding it. That's the thing that I've kind of heard in the past is like, hey, you should make this a nonprofit. It will make it really easy for me to get tax deductible donation and give you a lot of money. But I'm like, yes, but I'm actually trying to prove that our business can do it. But I'm also like, I feel set on that, but I also I just want to explore more that idea of the pro bono or the nonprofit.
I mean, I think the biggest reason to do a nonprofit is if you plan to get mostly grant funding or donations. That doesn't necessarily sound like the case for you, but to your point though, like it's so tied to your brand, Odd Notions brand, and the impact you're making. So that's probably a downside, is if you make it a nonprofit on its own, you can't really like, I don't want to say claim that impact, but you know, like,
leverage it.
Yeah.
Because I know a lot of businesses create foundations.
Yeah.
And sometimes they are separate entities, and sometimes it's just a marketing or like a way of talking about it, but it's not an actual foundation, legally speaking.
Yeah.
Well, I have a question, Eleazar. It's also because I think part of a consideration too is like what the vision for Dream Night is. Is it always just like an Odd Notion program, or is the vision for it to be something that could stand alone and grow and thrive? Like, what's your vision for Dream Night?
Yeah, one of the visions that we had is to, what if created such a oil machine, if you will, that other agencies can adopt that same program into the way they provide marketing and branding. And so it would be like a autopilot situation that you just like activates, like download the kit. These are process. These are step by step. Here's how many people you need. Here's the application that you need to run. Blah blah blah, blah, and just kind of train people on that framework. Train big agencies on that framework. They have more dollars to put towards that stuff. So we're small.
Is that then a revenue source for you? You like sell that like kind of?
I haven't gotten that far, but it would be at the level where we're not holding the keys to how to do it. We're like, no. As many people do this, the better. So we don't want to hold the keys. We want more organizations to do this, more businesses to do this. So that will be the main way we.
Did you say an oil machine?
Yeah, whoops.
I know. It's so funny. I heard for the first time a few weeks ago, somebody kept talking about a bike rack. And I was like, what are they put it on the bike rack? And they were like, oh, it's a parking lot. But like it's like the more eco-friendly, it's a bike rack. So we'll find a new terminology for oil machine. Solar
panels. Machine?
Wind turbine.
Wind turbine. Yeah, you'll create a wind turbine for them. Yeah,
just something that's easy to run, and a lot of the thinking has been done for the business.
Well, and I think I know there's more about New Avenues Inc. The details in that, but it also what's interesting is it's like kind of sad, but also makes sense that people see something like that and it's like, oh, that should be a nonprofit, because that's like a purposeful thing, and that can't be this idea of well, how are you going to monetize it? How are you going to scale it? You're like, no, I just want people to have access to this so that more impact and more good can come in the world. And I think for a lot of people, they hear that and they think, oh, well, that's nonprofit. Business doesn't do stuff like that.
Right. And I love that. I'm going against the grain on that.
Yeah. But I think you're pointing to, I wish there were better structures for that. That's it's not nonprofit, or to have a for-profit, have a nonprofit arm, the current structures are just all about what you can't do. And like you're going to use it to cheat the system. I wish it was easier for folks like you who you're not using it to cheat the system. Is there an alternate path? And I'm not sure that, I think it exists, but it's probably inaccessible. I wish it was more accessible.
Random question also. When people do say oh, we have a foundation inside of the business or whatever, I know Legos does. Legally, is it? Or what?
Is it what?
Is it a foundation? And what is a foundation legally?
Oh, now we're getting into dicey territory. I know. But it is a legal foundation. That's like a private foundation can be a type of organization that gives out grants, basically. And they have a whole other lots of rules and regulations, although I think it can be used for bad too. But all our tax code, everything could be used to do bad.
And will you consider foundations to be in that swath spectrum of ways in which you can create impact?
Oh, that's a good question. It's a nonprofit, so it would be on the nonprofit side.
Got it.
It's like a type of nonprofit.
Rebecca, can you specify that spectrum of impact again?
Yeah. Thank you for asking. So there's a spectrum, right? For-profit on one side, nonprofit on the other. Your standard for-profit Wells Fargo's of the world are over here.
Wow.
Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. Yeah. And then you have your New Avenues for Youth over here, and there's a wide range in the middle. And so I'd say over here on the for-profit side, right next to that is companies, for-profits that have corporate social responsibility programs. So actually Walmart is a good example of that. They have actually a really big CSR program because they're huge and, they can. And then there's more socially responsible businesses, which are a lot of B Corps, actually. That's kind of your Nespresso would probably fall there, and then actually Nespresso and a lot of B Corps. It's more about businesses that socially responsible, meaning that they have really they try to do no harm in their operations. So,
Right.
and throughout all of their operations, right? And then you have social enterprises, which is what we're talking about with New Avenues Inc., which is they actually, their whole purpose is to solve a social or environmental problem. So their purpose is integrated completely into their business model.
Gotcha.
And one interesting thing, though, a social enterprise could be a nonprofit or a for-profit. It's and you can see there's a lot of gray area, and like it's confusing when we say business for good or purpose-driven business. Do we mean this side or this side? You know, I think that's one of the reasons we're doing this podcast, is to kind of like break that open and help people see like where businesses fall. One other interesting thing about New Avenues Inc. is they are a People and Planet First verified organization. So actually our business, the Impact Collective, Odd Notion, we're also People Planet First verified. New Avenues Inc. is People Planet First verified. It is a verification specifically for social enterprises. So one of the reasons this can get confusing, we're also B Corps, right? And like B Corp kind of has a wider net. So like B Corp could be socially responsible business. It could also be social enterprise. Our businesses are over on this side, but there's also businesses on this side. The thing I like about People Planet First is that it's more specific around, it's actually very clearly this side, you know?
This side of the...
Like more towards nonprofit.
Got it.
We're definitely for profit, but our whole purpose as organizations is to solve a social or environmental problem. So that's what this People and Planet First verification says.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So
And the other day, to my shame, you told me you are a social enterprise. I'm like,
yeah.
am I?
And you didn't know. I know.
was like, what?
That's exactly.
Yeah.
And I think that's actually why this People Planet First verification doesn't use that word, because social enterprise means so much to different people.
It does.
And like it doesn't really, it's
When
not
I think
a
about
great
social
word.
enterprise, I think about, for whatever reason, again, lack of knowledge, like Toms?
Yeah.
You know, like,
yeah.
I'm thinking like...
I'm not even sure they are.
like-
Actually, they're not, because they kind of like make shoes and then do good on the side.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
like they might be somewhere in the middle, but yeah.
That's actually a perfect example, is like, do you make shoes and do good on the side, or do
Yes.
you make shoes
That-
for,
Right.
like impoverished children in a different country or something, right?
Yeah.
Like, is the purpose of the shoe to solve a problem, or are you using the revenue from that shoe to do something positive?
Love that.
Yeah.
It goes back to the, like, how integrated is doing good in your brand framework. Is that
Yes.
a part of your why?
Yep.
Is that a part of your how? Going back to the golden circle from Simon Sinek's, is that a part of your what?
Yeah.
So how integrated is it? And a lot of folks, we found that a lot of the times they're not integrated.
Yeah.
It's great that they're doing it already and they haven't found a way to integrate it.
Yep.
That's better than not having anything to
Yeah.
show for. But
I think social enterprise probably has all the way to the what. That's a good way of looking at it. Social enterprise has their purpose in the why, the how, and the what. Not a lot of businesses for good have it in the what,
Got it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Which is hilarious that you don't know you're a social enterprise,
I know.
because you're so integrated. You've achieved integration.
I know. Congrats. We just gave
Thank
you
you.
another
Yeah.
accolade.
it's also what happens when you don't care about the label.
Totally.
Yeah,
It's-
exactly.
It's also what happens when your whole business is built on your why, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't occur to you. Like, frankly, I've had that thought before. I was like, are we wait, where is it? It's like, duh.
Yeah.
It's just because I'm trying to come up with something sort of external to go like,
Right.
well, what do I point to? When it's like, no, it's everything.
Yeah. Right.
Everything that we do
Yeah.
is to solve a problem.
That's actually what I really like about the People Planet First movement. So it's this verification was started by the Social Enterprise World Forum. Again, there's that social enterprise world, but they were very intentional about calling it People Planet First because they recognize, like just what you were saying, there's movements all over the world that are doing good and just doing it for the right reasons, and they call it different things. So they tried to be very clear about, do you put people and planet above profit? Like, simple, then you're part of this too, whether you call it social enterprise, a for-profit owned by nonprofit, whether you call it whatever you want to call it, like that's what it means, right? Yeah. So
And I think it's interesting too, just like under capitalism, right? I think that like some people, like People and Planet First, right? Like above profit. I think that kind of concept like freaks people out sometimes, but it's like, we're still a for-profit business. The Impact Collective still drives revenue and has goals and wants to make money, right? Like we want to have money for ourselves and for our business to grow and to be able to have more of an impact. But it means that like we do not make profit at the detriment to people and planet, right? Like our decisions are people and planet first. Doesn't mean there's not profit.
yeah.
There's profit.
Yeah.
But
enough profit.
yeah, there's enough profit.
Yeah, exactly.
The whole distinction between being a social enterprise and then being able to be a for-profit and a non-profit is like interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, I would assume, my first assumption is, aren't most non-profits social enterprises?
Oh, good question. It's more about there's nonprofits that generate revenue versus that just rely, I shouldn't say just, but only rely on donations and grants.
I see.
So that's social enterprise means that you are creating revenue somehow.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Business is complicated.
I'm learning a lot.
Me too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'd love to actually share a little bit more about New Avenues Inc. and as People and Planet First as well. So one of the things I was thinking about when we talked about this topic was, so Rebecca and I were a part of, in 2020, for the year of 2024, we did an impact purchasing pilot program that Odd Notion was a part of. And we did this in partnership with Purchasing with Purpose, who helps facilitate the People and Planet First verification. Port of Portland and Prosper Portland were also a part of it. And we allowed nobody else with P names because it was too many. It was like P cubed or whatever. And essentially what we did was we found buyers who were looking to inject more purpose into their supply chains, and we matched them with People and Planet First verified organizations. A big part of that was getting companies People and Planet First verified. The Impact Collective was actually the first People Planet First verified organization in Oregon. And now we have, I think, almost 20. And so it's a growing movement, but the big thing I was thinking about was, so New Avenues Inc., it's this example of how organizations can start thinking about like their purposeful purchasing, right? So I don't know, it might not have occurred to me that there was like a social enterprise that I could purchase my swag from, right? That would be in line with my values, all of this kind of stuff.
Right.
And I know, and sometimes like purchasing decisions and research and all of that is hard. I remember I made a joke last year about like trying to be more purposeful with my personal purchasing. There's so many P words in this. And I was like, I would love to like buy everything from purposeful brands, but what am I going to find a B Corp certified like dog poop bags and toilet paper? Okay. Turns out there are B Corp certified dog poop bags and B Corp certified toilet paper, right? There are like, with the right amount of energy and effort, like individual consumers and businesses can make an impact with their purchasing. It's not just about like the company's individual mission and how you're living that out. It's like all of the ripples of the ecosystem. And so New Avenues Inc. is part of this pilot program, and they're, also this option, right? This example of like, you can get some swag and it can also provide like benefits and jobs. And so one thing I did want to share a little bit more about was about New Avenues and like their actual impact, because we always come back to that. And they don't have an impact report, at least one I couldn't find on their website. But what's really cool is they shared like specific data about the impact that their paid internship programs have had. So they have 90 plus internships offered every year. The internships are generally part-time and typically last 6 to 8 weeks. So what was interesting about this is that the New Avenues internship program, the New Avenues Inc. internship program is a part of the larger service offerings that the nonprofit New Avenues for Youth offers. And so this is sort of this segmented thing that people can take part in. So they gain familiarity with both like the screen printing, like the specifics of the job, but also like confidence, time management, like, you know, what it's like to have a job and all of those pieces. So 90% of interns actually transition into stable housing. So it works. Wow. The program that they have created works. And 60% of those interns transition into full-time employment. So they're really kind of proving the model that when you provide like not just the actual skills and job training, but the support, the community, you know, the confidence, then the kids who are sort of receiving this training are having outcomes, right? So what was cool is on their site, they actually talk about a really specific story. There was a young woman who came who was homeless and she was unemployed and she was staying in a shelter. She came to receive some services at New Avenues for Youth. She was coming for a couple months. They identified an opportunity for her to work at New Avenues Inc. She spent time in that internship program. After that, she got full-time employment. And I think it was 4 months after leaving that internship program, she also found stable housing. So this whole like real sort of hyper focus on providing like skills and job training in order for employment and housing to youth who are at risk is working. And so I love New Avenues Inc. I think that the organization and like the Ben and Jerry's component is like, you know, they're just, I think to me, like the big takeaway from this conversation is like, you can start with the why and you can figure out the how, you know, like I know like a lot of my professional background was in like early tech startups, which was like the first question was like, what's a thing we can sell? And then figure out like everything else around it. And for, you know, a lot of purpose-driven businesses, the starting point is what's the problem I want to solve? And then stakeholder engagement and design thinking and all of that stuff comes, you know, when you start with the why, you can figure out the how.
Yeah. And though, like, you know, to kind of even pigeonhole my own feelings about having a Ben & Jerry's and figuring out, wait, what's the brand architecture for this? How does that make sense? I think that's better than not doing it.
Yeah.
You know? And so, like you said, like, just you'll figure out as you go. And you can get a brand, someone who can help. For that, for just how to talk about that, in a way that kind of all connects with the brand, because it absolutely does. It's just figuring out how to talk about it.
I did want to talk about the People Planet First verification, actually, around to kind of better define what it actually means, since we were just talking about that. But we'll see if I can remember the criteria off the top of my head. The cool thing is there's only 5 criteria to get this verification and to be, I don't want to say social enterprise, to be verified as an organization that puts people and planet above profit. One is that you, like what we've been saying, that your whole purpose is to solve a social or environmental problem. One is in your operations. Do you prioritize the planet and people above profit? One cool one, well, actually another one that's important, which we were just talking about, is that you have to show that you generate revenue, that you have a sustainable model. That's what that part is really important, that you have some kind of revenue generation that is going to keep you going for the long term. Because that's a huge piece of this too, is like that you are set up for long-term sustainability, right? Another really interesting one that trips people up is that most of your profits need to go back into your mission. So this is to protect against companies that might be doing good, but all their profit, an extractive model basically, where all the profits are going to investors, right? In a People Planet First organization, most of your profits need to go back into the mission which is a really key piece so that you don't have this extractive model. And again, that's about protecting your purpose long term. How many was that? 4?
Legal requirement.
I was going to say that there's one more, right? Legal requirement.
I was ready
which
to-
I knew.
I was ready to
Oh,
help.
thank you. Yes, that you have your purpose locked in legally. So,
Which means what?
good question. The best thing we have in Oregon and Washington is we have in Oregon it's benefit corporations, in Washington it's social purpose corporation. They essentially mean the same thing, but it basically says that you in your organization's bylaws you say that in all of your decisions you will consider people and the planet.
Gotcha.
So look at that difference though. Consider versus prioritize. So the best thing we have right now is a legal structure that says we'll think about the people and planet, which which is cool.
I'll think about it.
You know, it's something like
It's not nothing.
It protects our, because you're a social purpose organization. Yep. We are a benefit corporation. It protects us from being sued in the future if we make some decision that's for people or planet and not necessarily profitable. It's supposed to protect us legally. I will say it could be better. We could say it's okay to actually have people and planet above profit, but
we're not there yet.
We're not there yet, and that's why advocacy is important.
So this is super informative.
Yeah.
I think out of all the episodes, I think this is the most like in the weeds with structure and governance and all that stuff. And I think it's super fascinating because you're big on governance. You're also big on where the money's going.
Yeah.
And I think this is your episode basically of like, and just all the different ways in which you can make an impact. Governance in this case and the way it's structured is a big piece of that. And I think that's my takeaway from this episode.
Yeah, and I think there's something really important about demystifying it, right? Because it can, like, being a business owner is already hard and complicated, and figuring out something you can go to market with and make money for, and then how do I hire or any of this? Like these structural pieces, it's the stuff that like it gets real nerdy and real in the weeds real fast, and it's also incredibly important.
And I'll do a plug. Like y'all helped us. Like it as a small business, I don't have time. It's overwhelming, and having someone that can help you and walk you through that, like the People Planet First, very simple process. B Corp, not so much. But with help, you can definitely get there. We did a sprint model with y'all. We sat down one day, went through the entire questionnaire in one day. That was like, because when I stared at it, I was like, dude, no way.
Yeah.
I can't, my brain breaks,
Yeah.
just thinking through all of that.
Yeah.
Props to anybody who's done it on their own. I've heard a lot of people who've done it on their own. I was like, no way.
Yeah.
I can't. I don't have time. It takes a long time.
Yeah, exactly.
But with help, you can definitely get there. And again, if none of those things are an option, you can always pursue all those things without a certification.
Yep.
And that's better than a certification itself.
Yeah.
So just get to work.
Yeah. But People Planet First is not the one that took you a day. I think that took you more like an hour. That one's only 5 questions.
Correct.
So,
Yes.
which is what's so great. I think it's much more accessible. Plus, it only costs $85. So it's a good option for folks like you're saying who don't have the time to hire consultants or spend
You can definitely do that on your own.
months doing it. Yeah. But that's what's great. There's a wide variety of options for all the types of impact that you want to have, including not even getting a certification, but it's a journey, right? And there's a lot of options along the way. Yeah.
I'll want to spend another episode just talking about why certifications in the first place.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about that.
Oh, that's because we don't have government regulations. That's why.
Yeah. Maybe we don't need an episode. Great.
Yeah, episode over.
Well, I learned a lot.
Yeah.
Thanks, y'all.
Yeah, that was fun. Thank you.
Well, that's it, y'all. Thank you for joining us. You can get the episode show notes and transcript on our website, sunnybrandspodcast.com.
If you have ideas or suggestions about any companies you'd like for us to take a look at and dissect, you can drop us a line at hello@sunnybrandspodcast.com. And if you want to learn more about the Impact Collective and all of the things that we do to help companies live out their purpose, you can find more information at theimpactcollectivepdx.com.